All right. Welcome to everyone in here, out there, all around the world. Welcome to today's Tech Talk. My name is Jay Emerlinson. I'm a global evangelist here with the ARIS platform at Software AG, and I am really excited to be joined by my good friend and man about town, Ravi Avari, in today's conversation around ARIS dashboarding and powered up insights. 5 tips to get the most out of your data in ARIS. Today's conversation is all about getting more value from the work you've already done. We talk about this with a lot of our clients, that they leave value on the table because they've got tons of fantastic data you've already paid handsomely to have available to you, but it's not leveraged and used in ways that are powerful to you from an insights and analytics perspective, from a security and data privacy perspective, from a content navigation and support for lowering the barrier to entry for accessing information. So today's conversation is going to give you our top 5 tips and a live demonstration of exactly how you can make it happen in the ARIS platform, courtesy of course, my good friend Ravi. Ravi, tell me how you feeling today, my friend. How are you feeling about this ARIS dashboarding topic?
Oh, I'm feeling great. I'm excited to ensure that all of our users are enlightened about what all they can get out of ARIS dashboarding. Looking forward to
Excellent.
presenting it them.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. And as you might imagine, today's webinar could be a one-directional conversation, but instead, we'd love to have you kick back feedback and questions, anything you can put in the chat. So on the right side of your screen, you should see a little chat box. You feel free to ask questions. We're going to highlight them. We're going to maybe even banner them if you ask a really great question. And we're going to try and get a chance to answer those questions near the end of our session today in more of an open Q&A. However, let's get started with the program. And the first program question we want to ask and answer is why? Why is it important for us to take a look at this? So let's take a look at your ecosystem. In the center of this house, you have ARIS and all the ARIS content that you maybe have built in your system. If you're still a prospect in ARIS, well, welcome to the family. Please come and join us. But if you're currently an ARIS customer, you've tacitly captured thousands, tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of different pieces of data quietly, but assuredly inside ARIS. Your business processes, which involve the models, the attributes of the models, the objects, the attributes of those objects, the connections between the objects, the assignments from objects to models, everything around it, and all the statistics that go along with it, as well as information about things like your customer experiences or your architecture or risks and compliance work that you've done within the ARIS platform. All of that exists within your ecosystem inside the ARIS platform already, part of the repository, captured as you model, analyze, and collaborate. Now, adjunct to that is all the additional information your business already captures. So things like business and external data that might come from other systems that you're capturing right now, market data from your market scans and benchmarking work that you do as part of periodic operations. From an operational excellence perspective, you want to know what your peers look like, what is good for you. Runtime information about your performance of systems, and of course, the transactions in those systems, things we can extract out in things like process mining, which we'll talk about a little bit. And of course, performance data, both on a process mining perspective, as well as things like time and motion studies and different KPIs that you measure about different roles, organizations, and their performance in achieving their business goals. As well, you have great data. A lot of you have great data about how your customers see their interactions with you. We think of that as touch point data, things like Net Promoter Score that help you to understand the quality of interactions that you have with your customer. This information is a data universe that surrounds the ARIS platform as it and its little orbit of information creates the home for process-driven insights. Collecting and consolidating that information, it is something you can use to drive operational excellence-based changes for your process. So, what do we talk about? We talk about getting the most out of your data. We want to hybridize that internal that the information you captured in ARIS and external information captured in your ecosystem, hybridize that together to form collective insights and put that into a common place for analysis. We think of this as ARIS dashboarding within your ARIS Connect portal, available to your users on demand. We also want you to help tailor that information to their needs, providing information that is context sensitive so that when you're looking at that data on a dashboard, it pertains to the information you're seeing in your models and objects and connections and all the information you need put in the right place at the right time. We also want to make things interactive. So dashboarding can feel like a static picture. And in fact, a lot of them are sort of literally pictures of where you are. If you've seen operational dashboards and other platforms, they might not be necessarily live. They could be a screenshot of some data put in an Excel and turned into a chart. Instead, you want to have not only live data, but data that can be tailored through interactivity, filtering, active selection. Those are important parts of getting the most out of your dashboards. We also want to help you to accelerate this development process with out-of-the-box use cases. Some things we've developed over our many, many years, 32, 33 years of having our platform and our expertise applied into the market. Things that we think people generally want around their ARIS data and data in their ecosystem, placed inside ARIS as an accelerator and a starting point. And Robbie's going to talk a little bit more about that when we get to the process mining side. And then, of course, tailoring KPIs to specific stakeholders and narrowing focus so that people only see what they need to see when they need to see it. That's a very important part of dashboarding. And I'm sure that this is sort of a tip zero, if we're going to go to, besides we go tip 1 to 5. Tip 0 is only ever show people as much as they need and let them self-select more. If you overwhelm them with information and you don't tailor the KPIs specifically to who's looking at it at the time they're looking at it, well, suddenly you're going to get people who feel like this is hard. Whereas dashboarding is meant to do the exact opposite, make it feel like it is easy, emerge out visualizations that help you to better understand the mess of data in this universe you've created that can be overwhelming, but inside are nuggets of truth and value that provide perishable or ongoing insights to make a real significant positive change in your organizational performance. So let's talk about our top 5 after we talk about this first, how we do it. So the idea is you're taking connected data from the various sources, you're building interactive analyses, and then you are creating outcomes for your stakeholders. Once again, this data sources can come from a bunch of different spaces. So in ARIS, we have our ARIS repository, which contains all those models, objects, attributes, connections, and assignments, as well as process governance, which gives you an understanding of the operational processes within ARIS itself, the approvals, the reviews of all of the process content or architecture content or customer journey, those sorts of things that create relatable and easily accessible transaction logs of access and choices, risk management, and of course, process mining. Other structured and information you might find is from CSVs or JSONs or JDBCs, or if you're pulling from process mining itself, lots of different ways of getting information into the process mining data set. Now, you're creating interactive analyses. These interactive analyses are in the form of dashboards and widgets on those dashboards that help you to consolidate information into single views at a time or collected views that all can be filtered via clicking. That clicking makes it easy for you to tailor it down as a business user so that your developers don't have to focus on everyone, just focus on giving you a subset, and then the people can tailor the content for their particular needs. And also, you want to provide 2 sets of things. Let's talk about content first, and then we'll talk about context, something I really love. So content is you're providing information and you're giving the right information to people so they can make decisions on what they're looking at. And that information is going to help focus in on things like performance, things on the acceptance and usage, things on governance and control, things that you can use for navigation and demographic analysis. These are things that are really useful for operating within ARIS. And we'll talk a little bit about that last one as we get into the specific 5 tips. But the other piece of the puzzle is context. I like to say that data may be king, but context is its crown. And for a moment there, we think about what is a crown? It imparts authority. You can see it's visible. It says to everyone around, this person or this thing has authority here. Well, as context provides authority to data, it also allows you to believe better in the information, use that information to make meaningful change. Without context, data is just a bunch of numbers. So let's talk about how this comes together in our top 5 tips. Our first tip is all about making information fast available. So, fast dashboard creation is a core part of giving you what you need. You need to have your business users feel like they can make dashboards on the fly. Otherwise, it feels like this is an inaccessible technical exercise. I'll talk more about that in a second, but make sure that this is available to users and that it is fast and usable. Second is that it's focused. The idea is that dashboards aren't generic sets of information for the whole company. For the most part, dashboards are actually specifically tailored to one context. Think of it as not really reusable information, actually quite context specific information at a time, at a place to make decisions. Focus your dashboards on what people need to know right now and where they need to know it. A third tip that I have is use access control as a mechanism of portraying more sensitive information, knowing that you have the right people viewing it and portraying only the right information to people so that you never have to overwhelm them with information that's not relevant to them. A fourth tip is to make this strategic. So take real information from your ecosystem and incorporate it as part of your dashboarding. This means that you're not just using this as another way of sort of looking at the ivory tower. People often view BPM and EA often as this sort of space of like a closed off, cloistered ivory tower of decision making that disseminates it around to the rest of the business. And it couldn't be further from the truth. Really, a good exercise of BPA practice, a process architecture practice, process modeling practice, is to involve a wider community of stakeholders. And when you bring their data in, when you portray their data within your modeling practice and within your modeling repository, you earn buy-in, you earn goodwill because you've reused the information they've worked very hard to generate. And you can portray it back to them in ways that they feel involved. And so suddenly you've earned a community rather than issuing directives. And lastly, use dashboards as a driver. And when I say that, I mean use it as a navigation tool for people to find what they need. Dashboards are very powerful for that in ARIS. And in fact, the dashboard actions is a really cool tool to get you to where you need to go based on the information you've already collected. But let's talk about that one at a time. So the first is, why do I say fast? So who needs to have fast access to dashboards? Well, obviously, business analysts are a great source of generating new insights, quick analyses, give you some quick hits on things you could do better, but also people who help to navigate things like information in transformation projects, your project control officers, things like that. I used to be one back in the day. Those folks are really, really useful to give you quick hits or ongoing monitoring tools that you can adapt over time to meet different stakeholders' needs. And they're going to want ad hoc analyses in minutes. So someone's going to ask them a hard question. And instead of having to sort of sort through data for hours or days, the ability to build a dashboard and portray it back to your stakeholders and then to make that canonical, that dashboard suddenly exists and is reusable by other folks. That's really powerful, but that can't take time. That has to be quick to do. They also use it to develop business cases. They're always part of the conversation about what is our expenditure, what is our burn from the project control officer perspective, or what is our value in transformation, and what would be potential savings from the business analyst perspective. They're developing these business cases, and it's very hard to do that without information connected to architecture, business architecture, capability service architecture, enterprise architecture. These are things that we need to see them together, and being able to quickly create those and then use them, either screenshot or actually have it as a live version, is really useful in developing and sharing those business cases. So how do we do that? I talk about generally available data. The idea you create a set of data feeds that anyone can draw from. So, the technical exercise, it is a little bit more technical on that side, not too bad though. You create a set of data feeds that exist within your data feed section of the dashboards and data feeds in ARIS. And what that means is that anyone who wants to build a dashboard on top of that can quickly draw from that much larger subset of information that you've selected into the tailored ones they need right now, and that you enable people. I cannot more strongly stress that you both do training on ARIS dashboard creation, but also ongoing handholding and coaching. And that could lead to something like a center of excellence, or at least a center of competency within which dashboarding becomes a topic. And so you have dashboard days where you show off the work you've done, the great dashboards that have been created, trade tips of great ways we've used emergent features to show a collected insight from multiple different widgets. I love that. Those are things you can do together within your organization as part of this practice development that really make fast dashboard creation a reality, not just a hope. And of course, it looks really great. You have the ability to create dashboards in seconds off of a selectable set of charts and widgets that are really easy, intuitive. These sorts of things are what you would have seen in other tools, but instead of them being kind of a static view, they become this instant portal to dynamic information from a set of data feeds that are readily available for your end users. I love it. And this becomes so easy to build. It becomes part of this practice. People start talking about it. This becomes a positive influence on the organization and its capabilities. A second thing is focused. Why do I say focused? Because what we want to do is make sure that when you're looking at information within the ARIS platform, that the dashboards reflect what you're seeing. Okay, so they're not generic information about, hey, here's our overall picture of what our business processes do. Sometimes that's information that's useful. But instead, when I look at something in ARIS, I open up a model or I click on an object, I want the dashboard panel that pops in to show me information about what I'm opened or what I've opened or what I'm clicked on. And from a business analyst perspective or from a control tower officer or end user perspective, this is really helpful. You see an overall picture of how something is performing, and you ask yourself a question: hey, what about this is contributing negatively or positively to the outcomes I'm seeing as a consolidated number? Let me click on each piece, and the pop-in dashboard show me a little bit more information about it. And why we want this tailored view to zoom into relevant data. And you need to select that data inside your model as you would normally, as a viewer, select your objects to find out more information in the details panel. Instead, your dashboarding panel will portray that information context specific and powerful for the analysis you're doing right now. So how do we do that? We use the context GUID in dashboarding and in our data feed. So we can be able to say, when I click on something, change what I'm looking at and portray that on my dashboard from my information set. So there's a great way. Once again, I would suggest training and enablement to be able to use the context of a click, so you can see what's going on, a context of a model, so you can see exactly what's going on relevant to your model. This is also super handy because it lets you create dashboards once and use them everywhere. This idea of cook once and serve many. I create a dashboard. I'll give you a good example. I worked with a customer a couple years ago where they were really concerned about risk coverage, as in, on my models, I portray risks. Some of those risks have controls attached to them, and some of them, well, they don't have controls yet. And we want to understand by overall in the company which risks have controls, what my percentages of coverage. But in every model, I wanted a subset view: where are my risks? Which ones are covered by controls, which ones are not, and a dashboard popping in to let me know what the performance of my particular model is in terms of like comprehensive risk coverage versus not. Be able to zoom in on things and understand information about those particular risks. That was useful to do once and then disseminate across all of the models. Only possible with context. And of course, this is an example of what it looks like. Hey, that was what I was just looking at. I click on a particular customer journey, and the dashboard popping in shows me information about just that particular customer journey. I love it. Lets me help to understand it at a glance so I can know where to dig into. The next piece of the puzzle is tough access control. And this is something that you need for two reasons. Well, the first is people who care about this are data security and administration, people who are concerned about the private information that might be transmitted over the course of seeing and examining in a dashboard the data that you have in ARIS, but also end users. And I'll tell you why. So, why do we do this? Well, first and foremost, we want to restrict visibility to sensitive information. I'll give you a great example. I worked in a hydroelectric utilities company. And the company was split sort of in the project was split 50-50 in terms of the teams on people who were involved in union-based activities and people who were not involved in union-based activities. We had to create separate dashboards and for there's actually lots of information that each could not see about the other for a variety of reasons. And for those who work in union-heavy environments, you know what I mean. Now, each were able to go to the same dashboard, but in a glance, that same dashboard wasn't actually the same dashboard. It was pulling different information. So the same dashboard panel had restricted data set information or restricted dashboard set information by user group. So if you were in the union group, you saw one dashboard. If you were in the non-union group, you saw a different dashboard. And this meant that you could go to one place and see what you needed without having to worry about selecting between what your role was or worrying about seeing information you're not supposed to see. This was automatically done simply through access control. Now, this leads to a second possibility here, which is reducing clutter in your selection. So if I permission restrict dashboards, different user groups, including like very end users, won't see more advanced dashboards. Or if I have different departments in the company who want to see a home screen that contains certain information, or the home dashboard that contains certain information, I can restrict down who can see which dashboard and use that as a great tool for only showing them what they need to see, reducing the clutter in their starting point for ARIS. That lowers the barrier to entry and earns buy-in. And so how do I do that? I use user group permissioning. And in mining, I use data set restrictions. And of course, this is what it looks like. I can select users for a particular dashboard or data feed. And I love that very much. Next is, of course, strategic integration of real data. Now, this data is going to come from a bunch of different sources, but your process excellence team is going to need to see real performance information if you're going to want to be able to use ARIS to talk to the realities of business operations. Your executive stakeholders also want to understand, hey, how is the change that you are promoting within our blueprinting actually affecting our process excellence, our process execution, our KPI achievement, or KPI target achievement. And so we want to encourage this evidence-based decision making. I feel like a lot of people talk about explanation basis. Oh, I can explain this away. I know about this. Oh, I heard a thing about this. I've got a best practice, a best guess. No, evidence is your key here. And evidence-based decision making is going to rely on data coming in from external sources that actually informs you as to what's really happening so you can make real decisions. And you want to overlay that visibility of reality with your process models so you can make decisions right where it counts. So we integrate real data from external sources. We use a process mining overlay view or a compliance setup and compliance view into process mining so I can understand what the performance is and what the flow is right where my ARIS models are. So this is a form of dashboard, sort of, but it's more of it's a process mining overlay setup that makes it possible for you to see something like this. As I look at my model, I'm seeing a red, something I should look into in an overlay. It's kind of like a dashboard, but Robbie will talk a little bit more about that when we get into process mining itself. Set this up and use this because there's nothing more powerful than looking at your model, looking at reality, and making a meaningful change right away. And then seeing the effect of that change. I love it. And lastly, driven. What do I mean by driven? Well, I mean, you want your business unit owners or end users to have a small number of clicks to getting the information they need. Yes, I've talked to one of our wonderful customers had a great rule that I love and I've taken to my heart as canon: 3 clicks. 3 clicks from the moment you enter ARIS into the information that you are looking for. If it takes more than 3 clicks, it's going to feel cumbersome. So, what do? I use dashboards and panels to reduce the amount of information that is visible to people so they don't have to go looking for stuff. So, we talked before about permissions locking. And then on those dashboards, clicking on one of the dashboarding components will navigate me to the ARIS model I need. Oh my goodness. No more going through multiple levels of the hierarchy to go find what I want, knowing the exact path. I simply click on a dashboard element and I use actions in the dashboard widgets to take me to my ARIS model. And of course, how do I do that? Well, ARIS query powered data feeds have the GUID of the model, and that GUID of the model can be incorporated in the linkage that takes you out. And suddenly, boom, your dashboard widgets, when you click on them, have a link to the element that you're looking for in the database. So it leads to easy filtering, it leads to quick navigation, and it leads to more acceptance and buy-in, people bringing things together. And I love it. So those are our top 5 tips. We want to make sure that everyone comes together around your dashboards and brings them to meaningful things. Now, of course, here's an example. I click on any of these components, it'll take me directly to my content, and suddenly I'm where I need to be, and I'm seeing what I need to see. And that's there's no better way of earning quick access, quick buy-in from that. But I could tell you more about these things in words and I could show you screenshots. I want to pass this over to my friend and yours, Ravi. And Ravi, I know we've talked a lot about this. Let's stop sharing my screen and start going to your screen and talk about what does it mean to actually do this in practice.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful, insight into how you can leverage the power of ARIS dashboarding and process mining dashboarding. Now, I will walk you through a live demo of what we can do, and more importantly, focus on how do you enable permissions, where all you can integrate your dashboards essentially to give you all the possibilities. So let me share the screen. So you're seeing this, I guess.
I can see your screen, Ravi. You are good.
Perfect. So this is the most familiar screen for all of you, our ARIS home screen. So let us assume a scenario where we are trying to analyze some information about an order to cash process, a process that all of us can understand in the audience. So let's see what we have here. So if we search for order to cash, we see that there is an order to cash process already available here. So we have the order to cash diagram that basically takes an order, creates a sales order, prepares the shipments, and hand over the shipment, which is essentially where we'll be focusing today towards the end of the process. But when we have an order to cash process, all of us will be really interested in understanding how is this process performing. And how do we know that? We will know that from the real world data. So we have a data here, that we can essentially load it into the dashboarding and try and see what we can derive out of it. So here we have the ARIS document storage. So this is the parent folder. You will have the feasibility to add as many folders as you would want, make it hierarchical, readable for you and your own audience. So let's upload a file here. So I have a file, that basically has some data about order fulfillment. So I open it and I give it a name. Here you can add a lot more information about description, and you can add tags. So I would say basically hashtag fulfillment. These things can be used to search, by the way, and then you click on upload. So when you upload, you have the file here. So as a rule of thumb, when we are proposing a happy flow to all our users, we recommend you start using this data, creating a data feed. So because a data feed is something that you can basically configure at one point in time, and you can use it in as many number of dashboards as you can. So let's go ahead and try the same approach. We have the dashboards and data feeds section here. Here you will have the dashboards and data feeds. If you have the necessary functional privileges, you should be able to create or add one data feed. So let's add a data feed. So when you add a data feed, you will immediately see the type of data spaces that we can support, right? So if you have a file already uploaded to ARIS documents, you could use it. Or if you have data somewhere else in the web, you could basically paste the URL here. Or if you already have existing dashboards and you want to basically mash up or use the existing dashboards to create more enhanced analysis, you could also use them. And similarly, you have more options here. And what kind of a data that you can see here? You can basically use CSVs, Excels, JSON, all the standard things that you can use here. So let's go ahead and create one. But here we figured out that we have to basically have the URL for the file that we have just uploaded. And how do you get that? It's even more easier. So whenever you hover on any file that you have uploaded to ARIS, you will see a little I icon here. I stands for information, let us say. So you click on information, and here you have this dedicated section called dashboard data link. So use this, copy to clipboard, go ahead and use the documents here. So you will see here the same URL is basically pasted. Or for those customers, there is who are basically having multiple tenants, where you have a development environment or you have test environments and a production environment, I would recommend, you remove this tenant ID to make it more generic, essentially, and use it as you want. And here, when you click on the calculator icon, it basically shows you how the data is here, right? So now you see the data is completely haphazard. The reason is the separator is not listed right. So let's go ahead, change it to semicolon. And when you hit on calculate,
If I can stop you here, Rabi, my apologies. We are certainly currently locked on the ARIS repository order fulfillment.csv screen, so you may have to stop sharing and reshare perhaps your whole screen. My apologies.
so yep, okay, let's go back and start from the beginning. That will be easier for us, right? So whenever you upload a file, you have an icon which we call as info icon. When you go inside it, you have a quick link to the dashboards usage. So when you click on copy to clipboard, you have it ready to use. So here you go to dashboards and data feed section, and you will start creating a data feed by clicking on the plus icon. Let's go ahead and try to add from the ARIS documents that we have just seen. But we'll remember that we have copied the URL from the information icon. If you look at the URL, this URL is a very specific URL to the to the tenant and the URL. But in a lot of your cases where you are having multiple environments between development, test, and production environments, I would recommend you rather go for a more relative URL. So you basically remove this and paste the link that you have got it from there, and do not have a dependency on the tenant here. So let's go ahead and then click on calculate. So when you click on calculate, you see that the data is not structured well. It could be because of the separator. So let's go ahead, change the separator to semicolon. And when you click on calculate, now you see the data is there. So we have a lot of data here, but we want to use some of the data to basically start analyzing what kind of a customer groups do we have, what kind of an orders are are being placed so higher, and if there are gift orders or non-gift orders, to essentially get a sense of what is being happening in reality, so that we can tweak the processes to better serve our customers, right? So what shall we do? So let's remove those things that we don't want, we'll aggregate those things into a data that we can use for our analysis. So let's try to use the aggregate operator here. And here, we would want to have information of the country, and we would want to have the information of the customer category, and we would want to have the information of if it is a gift or not, and if we want to have the information of the NPS that is being given, and the normal price points that is being operated. We can have a lot of more information here, right? And then you will want to add it all by sum. So if you look at it now, you see all the data is already filtered out. But we see there are some empty rows, which could basically cause some deviation to the essential end result that we would want. So let's go ahead and start using the filter. So we would want to filter the rows that do not have a lot of information. So let's filter values. Here you see there are two operations. You will want to either let the values that pass the exact conditions or block the values that exact conditions. So here I would really want to let the pass. So I will go ahead and say If the quantity does not equal 0, which is basically some junk data, we would not want to have that. We will basically now immediately see that all the data that we have has been filtered out, and we don't have the information or that is basically misleading in any way. So here we have the information, and we now go ahead and see what all information that we have. We have country, customer category, gifts, and price, but oh, we just found out we don't have the item categories. So let's also add that item category. And when we filter this, so here we have all the information that we have. So we will save this to say order fulfillment. And we will go back to our repository view. When we refresh, we immediately see that we have the data feed that is ready to use. Now let's go ahead and create a dashboard. So when you go into the dashboard, this is our new React viewer of the dashboard. So here you have all the options that you can use, all the chart types that you can use. So let's go ahead and see what are the most top performing categories in our orders. We now already know that we have created a data feed, so we can select a data feed here, and we see that the list is here. So if you have a long list, you also have a search bar, which makes it easier for you to find it. Let's go ahead and use the order fulfillment. And what do we want to have here? So we want to have the customer category, and we want to have the price point that the customers are really operating in. Similarly, we could also try and use something else, understand about the item category as well. Now that you have created the data feed once, you can use it multiple times. So here you'll use the item category. You will see again the quantity that's being that's being ordered. And similarly, you can make any number of analysis just by adding one simple data feed. So here we also understand, there are some items that are basically either gifts or not. Now we have an understanding of what is being ordered by our customers in reality. We will know how to basically enhance our process in such a way that will basically cater to this kind of audience for these needs. Let's go ahead and save it. Now we have the dashboard ready. If you go into the settings, you will see that you have something called permissions here. So when you click on permissions, you have an additional button. So by default, whoever is creating the dashboard will have all the permissions. And when you basically click on add users or groups, you have all the users listed here. You can basically choose between giving permissions to a user and then deciding if you want to give them an edit permissions or only view permissions here. So let's go ahead and save. So the same can be done for user groups as well. Now that you have the dashboard, it only makes sense if this dashboard is actually placed in the right place, so that it can be given more context, right? But where all you can place this dashboard in ARIS, the possibilities are so many. So let me start taking it from from the very beginning. So when you go into the administration, or rather, I'll start from where all you can place it. So you can place an ARIS dashboard on the home screen. You can place an ARIS dashboard next to the process. So every time you go into the process, there is a diagram view where you can basically put the dashboard next to it, or you can have a dedicated dashboard tab, where you can basically place this dashboard. And you can also make sure that the dashboard is made available among the dashboard section of the published content for all the viewers who have access to see it. And how do you do that? It's all in one place. When you go into the administration, and when you go into the configuration sets, you have something called an active configuration set. All you have to do is to simply edit it, go ahead into the components and add the dashboard in the right place. So now you see in the odd, okay, let me go ahead into the models once again. So when you go into the diagram view, now you see, the dashboard is basically, configured. That is a process mining dashboard, but you really want to change this, right? Because, you want to have all the KPIs next to it. How do you do that? So you first go into the models and objects view, and you search for the model that you are looking for. So here, what we want is to have it, in the order to cache section. So what we do is when you give one more section, you have something called technical information. Go ahead, copy the GUID, and then go to the administration. In the administration, you have the configuration sets, among which one is active. You go into the active configuration set and go into the components. So here in the components, you have a dashboarding section where you really want to add the dashboard that you've just created. So here you go into add the dashboarding section. And here you will choose where you want to basically place the dashboard. Here we want the dashboard to be placed next to the diagram. So we choose it, a name for it. So let's say the order information. You choose the same for a language. And here you paste the identifier of the model that you have just copied. And then select the dashboard and click on add. And you immediately see that the order information is made available next to the diagram here. So let's go ahead and check, if it is available there. So let's go to the home view where we already favorited our order to cache process. So when you go to the diagram, that's where we've placed it. And if you look at the dashboarding, oops, what happened? Did we copy the wrong one? Oh, it looks like I copied the wrong one. Let me go back and fix this.
And as a note, if you asked a question, I'm quietly answering them in the sidebar. So feel free to take a look at what people have been asking and what I've been putting there. So hopefully people get a chance to come along. And as a note for you, I am answering some of these questions with a little bit of a cop out answer here, which is these are good things to ask at IUG 2024, which is April 9th to 11th. So
And thanks for taking those questions.
I'll take them
So
there.
let's go ahead and see, what else we can do here. So similarly, you can add the dash. Okay. Similarly, you can add the dashboard in the home page. You can click on add component. You can click on a dashboard here, and the dashboard pops up. So when you click on the edit button here, you have the list of dashboards, which is order fulfillment, and you just click on save. You see that the dashboard that you have created is immediately available to you on the home page, available for all the users. Now that from the last release SR24, we have made the dashboarding available for the viewers. You can put it on a homepage, a generic dashboard where you want to roll out the information to everyone, and each and every user who logs into can basically see it on their homepage itself. So now if you go back and if you go to the homepage, you just see the dashboard that you have created is already available here. And when you click on it, you directly go into the edit view of it, given you have the necessary permissions. So let's go ahead and see, what else is possible in ARIS, right? So the analytics capability is not limited to ARIS dashboarding here. What we can do is also have the same kind of analysis about a particular process also in our process mining section. So when you go into the app launcher here, you have an entry called process mining. So when you click on process mining, you can see that there is something called gallery. A strong recommendation, you can basically go ahead and start using the gallery. This is really a quick start, which we promote. Here in the order management, you have something called order to cache for SAP. So you go ahead and click on install. And in a couple of clicks, you have this installation already available for you. So the reason why we promote this is this gives you a full sense of what is actually possible inside the ARIS suite. So what kind of analytics you can configure, what kind of features are already available in each and every analytics capability, what can you do with the chats, what can be configured, and to what depth you can really go ahead and understand the data that you have, both coming from within the ARIS or the surroundings of the ARIS that are complementing the processes inside the ARIS. So while this is installing, I can go ahead and show you. See the installation is already done. We'll go ahead with this, and we have the data already available here. If you see, we ship these demos basically with the demo data also. So when you go into the process, you will see immediately that with some demo data, you can understand what you can achieve out of it. So here you see the process flow for the order to cache that is already defined, and you can basically do a lot of things apart from just the simple analytics that you have already seen in the dashboarding, which is also something I'll show you here. You go into the app builder and start creating the dashboards that you really want. So let's say here you would want to add a bar chart and create a case column for customer, for the customer group, and start adding a measure for the number of cases, let's say. Sorry, case column. And then all you can do is to also go into the process explorer to play around with the activities that are there in the process explorer, and then really click on quick conformance check, which will essentially give you a way to understand to basically define your own source of truth, and basically give a conformance check to understand how many of the already loaded cases are basically available as a part of the compliance, and those things that are basically deviating from your screen. And even these ARIS process mining dashboards can be placed on the home screen, or can be placed next to a model, or can be placed or can be made available for users for consumption. JM, back to you.
Wonderful. Well, before you stop sharing your screen, I wanted to note that there are a couple of questions that came in. Thank you so much, Ravi. First and foremost, amazing, amazing demonstration and conversation about ARIS Dashboard. A couple of questions that came in that would be really relevant to what you were just showing. That I think we wanted to hone in on, that would take you back to your data feeds. So first and foremost is there are a couple of questions about search bars and combo boxes. And just clicking on one thing to show filtering for the other. So if you wouldn't mind showing us what a combo box is and what a filter is, I think those are sort of connected to each other in your dashboard design.
Okay, let's go ahead. I'm sorry, what is asked about it?
So just a creation of a combo box and what it does, and then what a filter is and how that filter is applied from selecting one thing to filtering down the rest of the widgets based on your selection.
Okay. So all you have to do is really simple here. So all you have to do is, you have to enable the combo box widget from the list of available widgets here. And then you can use the existing data feed that we have just created. And once you have added this, you have a new icon called filters here. So when you go into the filters, so here you will see a list of all those elements, all those dimensions, that you have added to be a part of what you can filter. So here, because we've added a customer category, I have enabled customer category to be one of the filters. And when you go into view mode, now if you go ahead and select, let's say 20 to 30, you will see, only the details, given to that particular customer category are automatically filtered out on all the other widgets.
Excellent. That is exactly what we're looking for. The question, another question that came from Tim is it possible to have different dashboards assigned to one model? I want to answer that quickly. Yes, absolutely. You can assign any
Possible.
number of dashboards to a model, which means that they become selectable as different dashboards in your dashboards tab. Now, one thing to talk about. Remember, we talked about this idea of focus and tough access control. If you have multiple dashboards assigned to a model, which I often do, and each dashboard is permissioned locked to a different user group, which I also often do, everybody only sees one dashboard. And yet I've assigned a whole bunch of them. But depending on who you are, the dashboard that shows up is the right one for your role. Really important. So we had another quick question about mapping context sensitivity. So going to the data feeds and doing context. And another question about the idea of what is a system value or user input in data feeds.
A user input is essentially a constant that you can enter. You can use it for any comparison or filtering purposes.
And in a data feed, the context, setting the context in the data feed, if you wouldn't mind just going back to your data feed and tossing in a context box there.
Okay, here we go to the data feed. Yes, and sorry, okay, you're asking for user input right here.
Yes, and how you might add the context GUID or the ARIS parameters, system values and ARIS
Okay.
parameters.
Okay, those
Those
things
things
are
are useful.
basically
Yeah.
available here out of the box for you. So here you have 4 options, which gives you ARIS tenant, database, context GUID, and selection GUID. So these things are those things that will be mapped to your model, and basically at the hierarchy of the model that you are in, these values will be used. Here we don't have the
Excellent.
hierarchical model for the demo ready.
And a question I'm actually answering here as we go, but I wanted to make sure we got to it, just from Frank Wild. Thank you, Frank. How do you get data out of the ARIS database directly? And right now, one of the ways we do this is through querying, which gives you a selectable subset of all database content, which would be a huge selection if we just released it. And so one of the ways is querying, which gives you a very selectable through an interactive menu in ARIS Architect. Another way to do that is through information extracted in a report. So you can have a configurable report that pulls the information out. How do you see getting data out of the? Is that what you see from an ARIS database extraction perspective, Robbie?
No, it's basically through queries and reports, where basically, you run the report, the output is a part of the ARIS document storage, and that's what you will refer into this analysis.
Excellent. Excellent. And let's do another couple of questions here. Is it possible to reuse Power BI dashboards in ARIS in like an iframe or something like that?
No, not really. What you could do is, you could export the analysis data and import it as a CSV or Excel or whatever.
Yeah, excellent. And as you know, for you, there was another question here, and I don't want to spend too much time reading my own answer because I did write it out, but I do want. I spent some time writing it, so I do think it's good. So the question that came up from Shashi Kumar: dashboards can be built using other tools like Power BI and Tableau. What's the advantage of building this in ARIS? So this is an excellent question, and let me answer it live here because I think it's really important to think about. Dashboards are useful in context. Just generic dashboards that are a bunch of data thrown around and that have no actionable or no clear action to the insight lose a lot of value. And I think of that tools that are just dashboarding are kind of islands. You put a bunch of information in, it throws up a picture for you. And it's not clear what the next action is. Sometimes it's remedial action. So sometimes you actually have to go do something, like have a corrective action step or remediation. You know that from your business practice. But those are all band-aid solutions. What you really want to do is you want to engineer the process away, blueprint a new way of doing things that doesn't involve that problem coming up quite as often or perhaps at all. So where do we blueprint solutions for the way of working? We blueprint those in ARIS, which means a lot of the dashboards that our business is. So some dashboards don't make sense to necessarily put in ARIS. I get that. I understand. Like there are sales figures and stuff like that. Maybe that's something you can put in, your Salesforce. I get that, right? But for anything that it would involve a corrective action that would or a blueprinting solution that would re-engineer the way you do things from an architecture or systems perspective, or from a process way of working perspective, proposing other tools like RPA to help improve the way you perform, things like that. Those are ultimately realized in ARIS. You choose to publish a new way of working through this platform. You design, you collaborate, you govern this new way of working in ARIS. And so I choose to move my dashboards as close as possible to the source. And that source of way of working is going to be ARIS. It's going to be your process modeling repository. So that's the argument that I make. And I think the other piece of the puzzle is that this is something you want. You want eyes on ARIS. The more people using the system, the more people viewing the data, trusting your process models to be this digital dynamic standard operating procedure that they're going to follow, the better. So when you put your dashboards where your people are supposed to be, you create this collecting ground, this community of practice, of information, of data, of how to do your job, a trusted source and a collecting ground for feedback. You now have the space that is more powerful because you've put the data there alongside the processes, alongside the people, alongside the governance, alongside the risk. Everything is together. And that is a collective offering that is much stronger than any separate dashboarding tool will ever be able to offer. Well, I know there are a couple other questions that have come up as we go, but we only have another
1 minute.
Sorry, how do I integrate my dashboard into my landing page? Actually, that's a really easy one. The dashboards can
I'll show
be,
that.
there's a landing page in your home screen. You can just show that in a second. But that'll be our last question for today. There's a couple more questions that have come up in the process. Thank you so much for everyone asking it. Robbie, if you wouldn't mind just showing the last thing, which is putting dashboards right on your home screen.
I'm doing that already. So
Yes.
you go into the administration, and there is something called configuration sets, the one that is basically responsible for how you view ARIS right now. Go into the active configuration set and edit. So when you edit, you have here the home page section. So go into the home page and add a component. So here you add a component, you have dashboard as a type that you can choose. So select dashboard. You will automatically see here now a box. And when you click on edit, here you see the list of all available dashboards for you as a person. You can select any dashboard and click on save. So this is automatically loaded here. Depending on the size of it, you see the same thing has been horizontally arranged and vertically arranged. It doesn't matter. So this is what you see is what you get. You can arrange however you want it, and it automatically respects it. Now, if you go back to the home screen, you see it's automatically saved as well.
There you are at the bottom. I love it. All right, Robbie, that was the last question. Thank you so much. We're trying to answer questions asynchronously. If you wouldn't mind stopping sharing for one moment, I want to finally end on a slide that says thank you to everybody. And more importantly, I would love everybody to come join us at IUG 2024. So if you haven't registered, oh my goodness, you are missing out. This is a great opportunity for everyone to join our family, everyone together in Dublin, Ireland, in April 9th to 11th, 2024. Go and register. Come join us. Some fantastic speakers, some fantastic conversations. We love it. And we will see you all at IUG 2024. Thank you again, Ravi. Fantastic job. Thank you again to all of our wonderful audience for playing along, having a good time, asking great questions. We will see you all in our next Powered Up webinar. Thank you very much. We will see you soon. Have a great afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are. Love ARIS.
Thank you. Bye.